validate our study report on the discriminative taxes and the harmonization of excise tax in EAC region. For those who are aware, the study actually was commissioned last year, but due to some challenges, we could not manage to validate it in December. But now our consultant has shared with us the draft report, which we need to validate. So according to our program, we are going to start with our welcome remarks from EABC Executive Director. Then we'll have a remarks from Trademark Africa by Ms. Pavin, who actually, Trademark Africa is the one which sponsor this study through our PPD project on investment and trade in EAC. After that, we'll have a remarks from Dr. Pantaleo Case from the EAC Secretariat, because he's in charge with, among other things, issue of domestic taxes and taxes in general. After that, we'll have a finding in summary from the consultant. I think Mr. Sabato Mwalik from KPMG will make a presentation. Then after presentation, we are going to have some comments, and we will start with a representative of the beverage subsector, where our vice chair from Uganda, Mr. Kaheru, will make a brief remarks and invite Ian, who is going to make a input from the subsector. We are going also to have a perspective of tobacco subsector from the BAT East Africa. We have, because of the time, we have decided to choose the two of the representative of sector which are actually affected by the excise duties. Then from there, I think we will receive a brief comments about the study from the from all people who are actually interested to make comments. So welcoming Mr. John Kalisa, the Executive Director of EABC, to make a welcome remarks. Karibu Rasio.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Allow me, first of all, to convey the greetings from my board directors, and the board members present during this validation exercise. If you can mute Adrian. Yeah, so to thank the board for their guidance and wisdom. Allow me also to thank Trademark Africa for funding this interesting study on discriminative taxes and harmonization of excise duties in the EAC. Of course, my appreciation goes to EAC Secretariat, the representative who is with us, Asante Sana, Doctor, for joining and providing your insight about this study on domestic tax harmonization. My appreciation also goes to Coca-Cola and BAT for their continuous support to EABC in our strive to create a conducive environment in East Africa. I want also to appreciate and thank the media fraternity who have joined us and who have been able to popularize and share the insight about the domestic tax, and some are present, including the newly born baby Africa Integration Agency. They have been part and parcel of raising the voice of East Africa in terms of the integration agenda. My appreciation also goes to KPMG for their knowledge and expertise in this area, and indeed they have done a commendable work, and I want to draw the audience to look at their presentation. It is a very insightful presentation. So before I deliver my welcoming remarks, detailed remarks, I wanted to start by sharing good news, which will be the basis for our discussion and presentation. The good news is that despite the global economic shocks, COVID, climate change, and the recent Russia-Ukraine conflict, the best performing economies in Africa are coming from East Africa. And the recent report that was launched by African Development Bank singled out 2 countries among the 5 countries, the most performing countries. That is Rwanda, that is posting about 7.9 GDP growth last year. That is remarkable. And United Republic of Tanzania. But even others, Kenya, Uganda, they are doing quite well. Their GDP growth is above 5%. And this is something to congratulate the region that despite all these multiple shocks or confluence of external factors, the region is still the fastest growing region in the continent. So again, kudos to Rwanda and the United Republic of Tanzania for making it among the 5 best performing economies in Africa. So this is strongly attributed to our partnership between governments and private sector. We realized that even during the report presentation by the report, when they launched the report, they said the power lies in leveraging the ability of the private sector. Those economies, including Rwanda, they are able to support SMEs in their growth strive. So the business environment was very key. So as I move towards the report again, when you look at the stages of integration, the customs union, common market, the issue of harmonization of domestic tax has been one of the key topics that has been discussed since 2010. We are talking about almost 12 years or 13 years down the road when this exercise has been the domestic tax harmonization has been one of the issues that has not moved. So we looked at what is the impact of the harmonization of domestic tax. When you look at the different domestic tax system in the community, they tend to hamper the enjoyment of the freedoms granted by EAC treaty and the protocols. These freedoms and rights include free movement of goods, services, suppliers, capital, labor, persons, as well as the rights of establishment of residence. Some of the challenges and impact of unharmonized taxes include distortion. When you don't have a harmonized tax structure, it means there is a distortion, and that distortion is properly reflected in our low level of intra-regional trade, where we are talking about 20% of the growth of intra-regional trade, while other regions like SADC are talking about 49% growth of intra-regional trade. And also, it hampers the investment, the inflow of both cross-border investment as a FDI, when you have an harmonized structure. It also creates an leveled playing field between domestic goods and similar or like imported goods from other partner states due to persistence of discriminatory taxes. I'm happy BAT and Coca-Cola here. And again, to commend them, when I was looking at the statistics, I realized that beverage sector has been one of the resilient sector in the EAC. And kudos to Coca-Cola, kudos to BAT, because you've continued to support, despite all these challenges, you've continued to support the growth of our economies. So unharmonized domestic tax also creates what we call tax competition, which is an heresy in the region. It also promotes. It is very hard in terms of promoting a region as a single investment destination. So, of course, the study will highlight some of the issues that have been highlighted, including the distortion effect. But I wanted also to point out that lack of harmonization of domestic tax is one of the issues that is promoting the growth of the informal sector in the region. So there is a kind of a positive correlation between our tax structure and our level of informality, because when you have an harmonized system, then it means that it is subjected to abuse. So as we move forward, as we try to discuss this, we need also to take into cognizance that, and I was also looking at the data and the statistics. So I looked at the contribution of our tax to the GDP ratio, and I realized that for the past 10 years, we've been stuck around the 16. The highest in Rwanda is around 16.9. The contribution of our tax revenue to GDP is very low. When other countries like Tunisia, they are talking about 32%, South Africa 28%. So these are some of the issues that we need to reflect on in terms of how do we broaden our tax base without necessarily creating a kind of a cascading effect of this tax, because when you talk to the taxpayer, you find that there is a lot of ambiguity and a lot of unknowns within our tax structures. As I conclude delivering my opening remarks, I wanted to remind the audience that tax, again, as echoed by the good economists who always quote, the good tax must fulfill 4 important canons. One is the canon of equity. Another one is the canon of certainty and predictability. You find that our policymakers and even the investors, they don't want to invest in an environment where taxes are not predictable. And finally, the canon, an important canon is of economy. You find that the cost of administration of our taxes is sometimes even higher than the tax we collect because of lack of simplicity, lack of understanding, because of all these factors I've enumerated. So I really look forward for a very positive deliberation, and I call all the participants on this call that please provide us your inputs to enrich this study. I want again to thank all the supporters, our funders, Trademark Africa, Coca-Cola and BAT for their support and contribution to ensure that this region remains most attractive region to do business. And I call upon all investors that East Africa is the only region that you can make profit. Asante sana, thank you, and I wish you a very good deliberation. Asante sana, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Edie, for the remarks on the justification and even the challenges and the investors and the business community are facing due to the unharmonized domestic taxes. Because of the time now, I think it is high time I invited Pavin from Trademark Africa to come and make remarks. Pavin, welcome.
Thank you, Adrian. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you, ladies and gentlemen, everyone online today. Good afternoon. So as you heard, my name is Pavin Beda from Trademark Africa, and I'm the head of public-private dialogue. So I'm honored to have been invited to this webinar today to validate the study on discriminative domestic taxes and the harmonization of excise duties in East Africa community. So first of all, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone joining us for this webinar. And on behalf of Trademark Africa, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the East Africa Business Council, our main partners under the Public-Private Dialogue, which is supported by the Kingdom of Netherlands, a long-standing and trusted partner for us. So for those who may not be aware, it was mentioned earlier, Trademark East Africa has now rebranded to Trademark Africa. So our focus still remains on reducing barriers to trade and improving business competitiveness. And as we gear towards the implementation of the Africa Free Continental Free Trade Agreements, it's imperative that we first get the regional integration agenda right at the regional economic communities level, because these are the building blocks towards implementation of AFCFTA. So for us as Trademark, we are very honored to work with the East Africa community, both the public sector and the private sector, as it's one of the most integrated RECs in Africa. So the EAC is a region of great potential and promise, and it's important that we work together to ensure that its growth is sustainable and equitable. So this study today is a crucial step in that direction, as it seeks to address one of the key challenges facing the region. That's ensuring that the tax systems of individual countries are aligned and working towards a common goal. So as Trademark East Africa, like I said, we believe that regional integration is key to unlocking the full potential of the community. So that's why we are proud to be supporting this study, and we'll continue to support efforts towards greater integration in the region, whether through funding the development of hard infrastructure, soft infrastructure, public-private dialogue, or enhancing business competitiveness. All this is aimed at inclusive and sustainable development. So Trademark East Africa will commit to doing its part in supporting the region's success. So today's findings and recommendations will have significant implications for policymakers, tax administrators, businessmen and women, and the general public in East Africa as a whole. So we look forward to engaging on this, and thank you once again, wishing you all an enlightening and productive session. Thank you, and over to you, Adrian.
Okay, thank you very much, Pavin, for the commitment of continual supporting the East African integration agenda. And now I think we invite Dr. Pantaleo Joseph Case, the Principal Economist from EAC Secretariat, for remarks. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you very much, and just want to confirm that you can hear me.
We can hear you very well, Doctor.
Thank you.
We can. I also can in my old age, Sante.
So I think I will be extremely brief because I'm here more on the listening and the looking out for the takeaways. So I'm going to be very brief. Good afternoon, and thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to say a word in this important gathering. First of all, allow me to extend my sincere appreciation to East African Business Council Secretariat and the Trademark East Africa for facilitating this important study, and also for convening this gathering to discuss this topical area of harmonization of excise duties in the EAC region. As we have noted, the focus of the study was to establish the impact of discriminative taxes on intra-EAC trade, and more importantly, to recommend policy measures for the elimination of discriminative taxes and the harmonization of excise duties. As the EAC Secretariat, we welcome this initiative, and we will be happy to receive and implement useful recommendations from this study and also from this gathering. Regarding discriminative taxes, let me just highlight that the EAC Customs Union Protocol is very clear that such practices are not allowed. And specifically, I'm referring to Article 15.2 of the Customs Union Protocol, which says that no partner state shall impose on the products of other partner states any internal taxation in excess of that imposed on similar domestic products. So if this article is strictly adhered to by all partner states, we will not even be here talking about the discriminative taxes. So among the recommendations we would expect from this study or from our discussions today would be on the best way of getting the partner states fully implement the existing protocols, including the Customs Union Protocol, which I just mentioned. Regarding the status of harmonization of excise duties in the region, I think this is correctly captured in the report that will be presented to us in this gathering. So I will not preempt the presentation, but I will be happy to make any clarification after the presentation if that is required. Of course, like the CEO mentioned, many of you feel that the harmonization of domestic taxes in the region has taken too long. Let me assure you that the EAC Secretariat is committed to working with our partner states and the other stakeholders to expedite this process. Now, let me stop here in the interest of time. And once again, thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for the word and even the recommendation regarding with the need to eliminate discriminative taxes according to the Article 15, subsection 2 of the Customs Union Protocol. As you are saying, you'll be available in terms of providing clarification regarding the status and regarding how the process is going. And we are happy to know that even EAC Secretariat actually acknowledge that the process has taken too long, and you are ready to expedite the process. So now I think it is high time to welcome Mr. Sabato Mwaliki, our consultant from KPMG Advisor Limited, who did the study, and I think he can present the summary of the finding of the study. So, Mwaliki, I think you can introduce yourself and we can start the presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Adrian. Just tell me if you can see my screen.
From my angle, I think I can see it, the presentation.
All right.
I can see it. Yes.
Great. My name is Sabato Mwaliki, tax manager here at KPMG in Tanzania. Together with me, I know some of my colleagues are online. We have done this study across the 60 different countries in the EAC, except the DRC, but we have gathered data from Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Burundi, South Sudan, and yeah, 6 of them. So my colleagues are online. So I would first want to thank my colleagues who are with me and for making this come through to this stage. I know this is not the end. After this, we now need to capture your views and opinion, and then we do a summary of the final report. And also thank EABC for giving us this opportunity. And you know, it's a learning point as well. We have been engaged with different people, Dr. Casey specifically. Thank you for hosting our team in Arusha. And the rest of you, I know a good number of you are also people we interacted with during this process. Probably not all of you, but most of you. So thank you very much. I know I only have 30 minutes, so I'll just be brief and take you through the summary as Adrian has put it. Right, so let's start why the harmonization. The harmonization of taxes stems from a non-discriminatory tax regime, which is one of the commitments for the EAC Customs Union. The idea is to actually eliminate internal tariffs and other charges of equivalent effect. So it has a legal background, or it's really backed up with legal instruments. Article 75 sub 4 commits the partner states not to impose any new duties and taxes or increase existing ones in respective of the products traded in the community. So generally, harmonization is backed up by legal instruments as displayed in the presentation. Article 75 specifically refrain members or member states from enacting legislations or applying administrative measures that directly or indirectly discriminate against the same or like products of the partner states. Article 15, I think the CEO spoke about it. Dr. Case has also touched based on the same. It bars EAC partner states from using discriminatory administrative measures or internal taxes of imported products from the EAC partner states against domestic products. So with regards to harmonization of excise duties as part of domestic taxes, the legal justification can be drawn from Article 83 of the Treaty for establishing the EAC, which then requires partner states to harmonize their tax policies with a view of removing tax distortions and achieving more efficient allocation of resources within the community. Article 83 is reinforced by Article 32, which that is Article 32 of the Harmonization of Tax Policies and Laws of the Common Market Protocol, under which the partner states undertake to progressively harmonize their tax policies and laws on domestic taxes. The idea being to remove tax distortions in order to facilitate the enjoyment of the four freedoms: the freedom of movement of goods, freedom of movement of services, freedom of movement of capital, and free movement of workers across the region. That is intended finally to promote investment within the community. So that explains the legal background as to why harmonization. So Dr. Kesa has put it really, if the partner states were quick in adopting or rather implementing the treat, then we wouldn't be sitting here discussing the harmonization, because it is really much detailed and several studies already done. So we will see why are we not getting there. The EAC Secretariat is online. So our approach was, we did a desk-based research approach. We have used both primary and secondary data. Primary data involved the use of questionnaires, and secondary data were derived from publications and publicly available records. We also did interview, face-to-face interviewing method. We employed that method as a sequential data collection method to capture any additional information that could not be covered by the open-ended questions. So the study comprises of feedback from key stakeholders across the region, including revenue authorities, the ministries responsible for policy formulation, which appears to be the ministries of finances in respect of in our respective countries across the region, the EAC Secretariat, the ministry responsible for EAC integration, several taxpayers in different industries, telecommunication, drinking water and carbonated drink manufacturers, beer and spirit manufacturers, cigarette manufacturers, and banking and financial institutions. So this now summarizes who did we meet, either by way of questionnaires or physical interviews. Now, to summarize the findings, we first wanted to understand whether people, the taxpayers and all the respondents are aware of discriminative taxes. So unharmonized excise duties and discriminatory taxes appear to be a major concerns for the business community in the EAC. Literature has indicated there has been several studies, as I've said, on harmonization of taxes in the region, but the process of actual harmonization of domestic taxes, including excise duties, has been a bit slow. So first we wanted to establish a list of discriminative taxes based on the respondents' views. So income tax came out, VAT came out, excise duty came out, and then electronic tax stamps. Income tax, for example, there is a differing branch profit tax rates. In Kenya and Tanzania, the rate is 10%, but in Uganda, repatriated branch profit tax rate is 15%, for example. Repatriated tax is actually, repatriated income is just income after tax. So once the branch has already operated in the country and paid the income tax, the profits that remains and has to be repatriated back to the head office suffers additional tax of 10%. So for the countries like Tanzania and Kenya, where the corporate income tax rate is 30%, that adds another 10%, which makes the effective rate to be 37%. In Kenya, non-resident companies are taxed at the rate of 37.5%. Now, that differing branch profit tax rates and the rules on the determination of the tax base, issues around employment taxes. You see the skills and development levy in Tanzania. It is not in Uganda or in Kenya or in any other country. We have workers' compensation fund in Tanzania. It doesn't feature in other countries. But there are also other taxes that feature in other countries, but they do not feature in another country. So that creates a difference in terms of income tax. Speaking of different rates of withholding tax for similar types of services, and also transfer pricing rules, as well as thin capitalization rules. The ratio for thin cap is different in the different countries across the region. On VAT, the difference lies from registration threshold. Well, we appreciate our currency is not the same, but if you change the registration threshold in dollar, you end up with different rates, registration threshold for the different countries. I think Rwanda being the lowest in terms of the registration threshold, which is just equivalent to $18,000, unlike Tanzania and Kenya, where the rate would be, the registration threshold would be around $40,000, or Tanzanian shillings, 100 million, or Kenyan shillings. Yeah, so on harmonization of excise duty and discriminative taxes, so we asked if it is possible to harmonize the excise duty rates among EAC partner states, and majority of the respondents said that harmonization would be possible. And essentially, many respondents across the region expressed immense positivity in relation to harmonization of excise duties in the region. The only exception was the Burundian Revenue Authority, which believe it is not or it may not be possible to harmonize the excise duty rates among EAC partner states unless there are further studies. So for them, they believe more studies are required before the harmonization process. The impact of discriminative taxes is evident among the EAC partner states through price distortion caused by the different taxes imposed on different products. So, as the CEO has said, the differing tax systems hamper the enjoyment of the movement of goods, services, capital, workers, and also affects the EAC intra-trade. So from literature, we actually gathered that there has been low volume of business that we see, like how many countries do invest in Tanzania from Kenya, how many companies do invest in Kenya from Burundi. There's been lower and lower volume of businesses intra-EAC. And we wanted to know if that could be attributed to the unharmonized taxes or excise duties. Several respondents said that could be part of it, but others said there could be other factors such as political, political conditions in the country, stability, etc. But generally, respondents believe it is possible and it is a very important step to harmonize taxes across the region. And they had mentioned several advantages, including ease of trading, especially for the landlocked countries like Burundi and Rwanda, and also curbing round tripping of products, which according to the respondents, of most of the respondents, it is attributed to the excise duty rates and the disparities across the region. And also, among other, they mentioned a number of advantages which are included in the report, but this is just a summary, to also level the playing field for investors in all countries, which would create a healthy competition. The impact, if we do not harmonize the taxes, will be hinging around price distortions and limitation of the free movement, which is, this is what that is the essence of the establishment of the treaty. But then if that is limited by the unharmonized taxes, for sure, we are not achieving the purpose. So there's also rise of illicit trade in case these taxes keeps unharmonized. So that illicit trade could be coming in form of smuggling of excisable goods, presence of counterfeit products, and tax systems, or the diversion of export products into the local market. With that said, there is a number of recommendations. So first, as I said, elimination of harmonization of discriminative taxes is not a short, but a long-term agenda. The study reveals the efforts to harmonize domestic taxes began about 12 years ago, and I think both Dr. Pantaleo and the CEO mentioned it. The efforts were steered by the tax policy and tax administration subcommittees in the EAC, as immediate as there was a successful implementation of harmonization of custom taxes. Respondents expressed a general feel that there is no political will to move forward. So that is one of the roadblocks. Most of the respondents believe we do not need further studies, but rather a political will to move forward with the harmonization of the domestic tax agenda because of fear of losing sovereignty on tax matters. Most of the EAC partner states, it seems from this study, that they are fearing that the harmonization of domestic taxes could erode their policy space of using domestic taxes as a policy instrument. So that is a view from most of the respondents, but the respective ministries of finance believe harmonization is not a political will issue. It is rather delayed by funding. The ministries of finance believe different funders have been appearing in different stages and then disappear before the process is completed. We are here to discuss and we'll hear your views. Another recommendation is you avoid bilateral discussions. Harmonization should be one country versus another, but rather we should be moving as one economic bloc in relation to the harmonization, because otherwise, if it is left to be a Tanzania-Kenya issue or a Kenya-Burundi issue, then we will not be moving as a team and we might not be achieving the purpose. In terms of the applicability of excise duties, respondents believe there is a need to revisit the purpose, where initially this was actually introduced as a sin tax. The purpose being to apply on harmful goods manufactured or imported. Mostly policymakers believe it was initially introduced, to curb for the bad habits, but now it has changed. Now it is being driven by revenue targets. So every time the respective countries look for alternative sources of revenue, they'll be seeing excise duty as the quick win. And in some countries, they have reported to apply excise duty on basic goods such as food and clothing, and consumption of goods and services should. I think the general recommendation here is the consumption of goods and services should not be taxed by way of excise duty, but rather should be taxed by way of VAT, because the VAT is a consumption tax. And so should be focusing on luxurious or non-basic goods instead of the basic ones. So that is on a need to revisit the purpose. Another recommendation is, as much as possible, let's get the private sector involved in the process, because they are affected by this process. So we shouldn't be leaving this to be a political discussion, but the private sector should be part of the process, because otherwise we may end up harmonizing and end up with other complaints. So let's take all the reasonable steps and ensure we are safe in the process. Revenue authorities across the region expressed the concerns over chances of tax evasion under the ad valorem rates, if you speak of the duty rates. However, several other respondents recommend the ad valorem duty rates because under this structure, excise duty would be determined by volume, meaning it wouldn't be easier to discriminate. It wouldn't be easier to discriminate in the sense that low-priced goods wouldn't suffer. So it's some sort of progressive rates. The lower the price, the lower the excise duty. However, we note from a similar study that was actually conducted by PwC back in 2014, where PwC indicated most respondents interviewed preferred the specific excise rates. Now, we have a conflicting view. Back then, taxpayers preferred a specific rate, but now taxpayers prefer ad valorem. So that's why you will see in the report we ending up saying maybe continue with the current hybrid structure where both the ad valorem and the specific rates are used. But yes, that is again for our discussion before we conclude the study. So Adrian, I wanted to end up there for now and be open for discussion.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sabato, for the presentation of the finding of the study. I think we have, I think the participants have heard what you have said. So now I think we go to the session where before we start commenting on the study, inviting Mr. Simon Kaher, who is our Vice Chair, Uganda chapter, and even the chair of EABC Policy and Advocacy Committee, to come and make comments before he invite the technical person who will comment on the behalf of beverage sector. Welcome Chair, karibu mwenyekiti.
Asante sana, nashukuru sana kwa hapa. Good afternoon everybody, and I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity just to say two things as a board member, but obviously as a very interested party since I'm in East Africa. First of all, I've got to thank the Secretariat for a job well done. This has not been an easy ride, especially with the disruptions that we're facing in getting this study done. Well done, bringing us to this day. And we've also got to thank our sponsors, Coca-Cola, British American Tobacco, and Trademark Africa. All these organizations I have worked with, so I'm feeling particularly proud today as an individual because of my association. The study itself, I'm sure you've all read the report, and I'll stress again, it's very important to all of us as East Africans, both in the private sector and public sector. Even as we speak, some of the issues that the respondents identified are getting worse, and they're threatening business in general, let alone business growth, which is what all of us, are aiming for on a day-to-day basis. In Kenya today, for instance, we are holding deep discussions about digital tax stamps, which our colleague from KPMG has highlighted there. Right now in Kenya, the proposal is to increase the cost of DTS, digital tax stamps, to a rate that is higher than the excise duty itself that the stamps are supposed to prove has been paid. And yet this is money that is paid to a private company rather than to the government of Kenya. So you can see that these are many issues that come together that pull us back as individual East African nations, but as a region overall. In the other East African countries, you have disparities because the rates of digital tax stamps are being revised downwards. Kenya is increasing the cost. How does this matter to all of us? It matters to business and to consumers because product costs may need to go up, meaning that our consumers might find it difficult to access some of these products, including basic goods, which the report identified should not be excisable under the strict definition of excise duty. But it also matters to governments because the net effect is negative in terms of revenue collection and, most importantly, attracting investments. Because our skewed tax regimes across this region make it difficult for one wholesome investor to view the East African community as one region where to place their money, their investment, and achieve the returns that they would want using this population of more than 300 million people as a market. So these issues are alive and affecting the economies and the people of East Africa directly, and it shows how valuable this work is. We've got to really take it to the wire, and in the spirit of one of the main recommendations, to ensure that the private sector is involved in the harmonization process. And it is on that note that I'm happy to introduce my colleague, a senior gentleman in the beverages sector across Africa, Mr. Ian Hashfield of Coca-Cola, who was also behind this project and the study and is leading similar efforts in Southern Africa, to give us the perspective from one of the leading multinationals on the continent, and as we all know, leading brand across the globe. Ian Hashfield, you're very welcome. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Much appreciate that introduction, Simon, and echo the sentiments of all the colleagues who've spoken so far. I think both are timely and in terms of content, very appropriate study. Now our time is short, so I'll just touch on 2 or 3 thoughts and look forward to hopefully discussing those further when the discussion is opened. But some really important points made around particularly excise, digital tap stamps, and the harmonization dispensation we look at. It really struck me that with the exception of one government, when reading through the report, there was generally consensus from that body of audience that excise rates are considered to be high. At the same time, we need to see a process towards the harmonization thereof. So the one thing I would put forward is it's absolutely critical that in this process toward the harmonization, there isn't a drift towards simply saying, well, whatever's the highest rate then becomes the way to go in a region or sub-region. And considerations such as excise as a percentage of total tax paid by companies, as well as some gate or milestone considerations is potentially something worth considering and discussing. Some form of empirical key that is an indicator or a gate at which point regional rates should apply, at what rate of phasing to a common rate should things take place. And these may be some of the unlocks that we've had up to now. No political will has been mentioned, but there were certainly practical considerations to get there. So the sentiment is absolutely perfect. I flag there's a risk in that, but at the same time, let's see how to use it as an opportunity. The sentiment around private sector participation, of course, fully aligned with and necessary to bring about competitiveness for the region, as Simon had mentioned, and alignment in the process toward that competitiveness. And here, really just 2 words come forward: the tax process and the tax structure, and the role of private sector becoming effectively the partner in that process. Obviously, prerogative is not for the private sector, but the partnership in the implementation and the buy-in is critical. And that would be absolutely critical for the competitiveness of the region and the sub-region in an increasingly globally competitive environment. So I've certainly aligned with that sentiment that's been raised. And then just a final thought, a third area around international comparators. We do note, with instance, with regard to SSB taxation, that is sugar sweetened beverage taxation in our industry sector, the current World Health Organization interventions do not recommend such a tax, which usually takes the form of an excise or is implemented through the mechanism of an excise. They do not recommend that as a best buy or top outcome and efficacy and efficiency buy. So therefore, excise for reasons are other than the facilitation of trade revenue, such as be it health or otherwise, need also to be taken into account when we look at the standardization of excise and the global practices as they are implemented in a region. Standardization around that, I would put forward, is also worth something to be considered. But I'll end by saying completely aligned with the comments thus far, and certainly commend the report for both its content and direction. And I hope those few points I raised can contribute to the discussion going forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian, and our chair of the Policy and Advocacy Committee. I understand the KPMG, our consultant, is taking the notes and the comments from the sector, and you will try to input those comments from the beverage subsector. Now I'm inviting a representative from British America Tobacco to come up with a perspective of the tobacco subsector. Anyone from BAT?
Adrian, my hand is up.
Maria, can you wait until we finalize with the sector?
Okay, it was just general questions, including also the sector itself. But it's okay, I can wait.
Anyone from DAT? Okay, I think we don't have anyone from.
Yes, we don't have BAT yet, so we can just proceed.
I think we can start with Maria, because you want to make some comment. Maria, karibu, from Kenya Association of Manufacturers.
Thank you, Adrian. My colleague Akinyi also is in the meeting, and she wants also to make comments. So I want her to make first the comments, and then I'll put across mine. Akinyi, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank the team very much for a good job. It brings out the issues we've been talking about. However, what I didn't hear come out in the brief is how many products are being charged excise or subjected to excise by the different partner states, and then the net effect. I heard that it will be negative to government and also to the business community and the consumers, and I'm hoping that in the bigger report the detail is actually sitting there, because it's important that government actually gets to realize that increasing excise duty does not necessarily mean that there's going to be an increase in revenue. On the contrary, as we have been trying to tell them and to demonstrate to them, what we many times have is a negative effect, because what happens is our production actually goes down as the consumption also goes down. So the net effect is reduced revenue. And the greater thing that grows is illicit. So if that is sitting within the report, then I think it's a good report. And depending on where it is launched, listening to some of our colleagues from the ministries of finance, this to them is a source of revenue. It's no longer sin tax. And until they appreciate that it has a negative effect, they'll continue wanting to impose it. And the other thing is that increase in revenue does not necessarily support or do away with illicit. It actually breeds illicit. So if we're able to demonstrate that, it would be very nice. And I like the position where we are saying that while everybody's reducing the excise stamp tax, I don't know that's a tax, I don't know what it is. When everybody's reducing that excise stamp cost, Kenya is busy taking it up. Where to, we don't know, we don't understand. So again, this is going to be good, because it's not just business in Kenya talking about it, but it's actually been brought out in the report. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Akinyi from Kenya Association Manufacturer, for the comments. And I think it's some of the inquiry which I think the consultant will respond after we have some sort of discussion. I can.
Yes, maybe I can add a few, just 2 or 3.
Maria, you wanted to add something also?
Yes.
Okay, briefly, please.
Yes, very brief. Now, the protocol is very clear, but it is prohibiting any partner state subjecting the EAC goods to any duties apart from what has been agreed. I have not heard that one coming out. And then again, the issues of discrimination. which is prohibited. I have not heard it being talked about, or even the recommendations. And then I'm just asking myself, when the consultant is talking about harmonization, what are we harmonizing? Are we harmonizing things that has been prohibited? Because that means it is non-compliance. How can we implement non-compliance instead of encouraging all of us actually to come on board and implement what is required of us? And then the other one is the issues of partner state to partner state to harmonize. Then that means we'll be losing direction on the EAC bigger picture. If we can talk about harmonization between partner states. The other one again that needs to come out is how much is this that actually we are talking about affecting the regional trade. At least there must be data so that data speak volumes. And I wish that one can come out very clearly and speak out loud so that when anybody looks at that particular report, they'll be shocked on how much we are losing and what others are doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria, for your comments. I think on the discriminative taxes, the consultant will continue to give some clarification, but I hope that he actually underscore the existence of that discriminative taxes. But I think it will give much clarification. But also, you will know that we have he managed to come up with an inventory list of the discriminative taxes as well as excise taxes. I think he will supposed to comment after we hear some comments from participant. Now, I think Dr. Samuel Nyantaya, after that, we can go to Pantaleo if we want to make a clarification. Maybe we start with Samuel Nyantaya.
Yeah. Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, my dad, Simon Kaheru. Thank you for your brief presentation. My concern is on the cost of ETS, electronic tax stamps. Seriously, as an engineer, I don't see the relationship between what people are being charged to implement it and what to actually cost to have it counting. Because what it does is just a counting machine using various, methods or media. I understand in Uganda, I think it is $10 per 1,000 units. In Tanzania, it's about $18 per 1,000 units. I know somewhere in Europe it is $1 per 1,000 units. This big variation shows that really we are not paying for the cost of implementing it, but somebody is cashing on the money. And there was a lot of controversy in terms of even the procurement. Yeah, and up to now, I don't know why the authorities are quiet about it. Something is very seriously wrong. Actually, in Tanzania today, we had a meeting with the Honorable Minister for Industries, and this thing has come up. The Tanzania government has promised to take it up and ensure that they procure somebody who would be able to implement it at a lower cost. But the whole thing, I think, is wrong. The counting, we have no problem with counting, to ensure that there is no cheating, there is no, understatement of how much is produced. That is fine. But it can be done at a much, 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 much lower cost. That's all I'm saying. San.
Okay, thank you, Doctor, for raising the issue on the electronic tax stamps. Actually, my colleague here used to say glorifying a counting machine, where we're investing a lot of money, but the technology maybe can be very simple and the cost can come much. I think the consultant actually, we're expecting him to give us some hint on the on how to move with the electronic tax stamp, because I understand is the issue in Tanzania, is the issue in Kenya, is the issue also in Uganda in terms of the cost the private sector is bearing. Dr. Pantaleo, please, can you come? Karibu.
Thank you, Adrian. I didn't want to come in at this point because, like I mentioned, I'm looking for takeaways, things that will help us, you know, speed up the process of harmonization and how this could be done. So I think I will wait for the details of this report to see if there are things that can help us. But since now you asked me to come in, let me just mention two things by way of clarifying. I take note of the fact that there is so much concern that the excise tax is being used not for its intended purposes, but more of revenue, I mean, as a source of revenue, so that even products which traditionally should not be subjected to excise duty is being subjected just for revenue purposes. In our discussion for harmonization, we have selected 5 categories of what we call mandatory accessible products, and those are the ones that are being recommended. Of course, this is simply still a recommendation because the council has not pronounced itself on that, but we are advising that the mandatory list of product accessible products should just be fuel, tobacco, alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages, which contains sugar, and the telecommunications. So those are the 5 categories that when the policy come out or the document that we are working on come out, those are the things that you will see. Of course, unless it's changed as we move it through the approval process. But at least to begin with, those are the things that those are the products that we are saying these should be subjected to excise duty. And in terms of rates, of course, we also not concerned from many people that in some partner states rates are very high. But the way we have been guided to harmonize the rates is such that we will only set the minimum rate. So we will set a minimum rate below which a partner state cannot set a rate. But if a partner state, for some reason, wants to have a rate that is slightly higher than the one that was set for the region, that partner state can be able to do so. Point is, partner states don't want to see their hands too much tied. They want some flexibilities here and there, and that is way of accommodating the flexibility of partner states. So the principle is we will have a minimum rates, but the partner states could be allowed to charge slightly higher if they so wish. I thought I should clarify that, and I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor, for the clarification. I think we need also to invite, there is someone here has written GM Finance. After that, maybe we'll go to Miraj Hamis, and then Professor Kabi. And then you will have a Frida. Can we start with the GM Finance? Hello? Okay, Miraji Hamisi, Kansusumo.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. I have one question to presenter. He presented that there's some fear to some partner states on the harmonization process. So I think one of the ways that we can treat this fear is through this study to come up with the analysis on how much the partner state will lose when we have harmonizations, or how much are we going to gain when there is harmonization. I think this is very important to be pointed out through this study as among of the way to treat the issue of fairness to some partner states to go for the harmonization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Miraji, for your question about the perceived fear on the harmonization of domestic tax by partner state. Now, I think we agree that we are going to Professor, is it Professor Kabi? Professor Kabi, if you are in, please, because I saw your hand. If Professor is not in, Frida Mbugua, welcome for comments.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. Well done, EABC, the study for taking on this study and the outcome that has been shared in the presentation. Just looking forward to if we can get a hold of the presentation. But just to comment, the last, I think the second last speaker just now has spoken about a minimum rate that would be proposed, and partner states would be at liberty to set any higher rates, just to give them flexibility. I don't know in what context that would be, if it is excise or whatever other tax. Won't we again be going back to the same issue we are trying? Sorry, won't we again be going back to the same issue we are trying to resolve? And again, introducing certain taxes that may need future harmonization or discriminative, maybe discriminative in nature. And this I'm speaking to case in point excise, for example. If we were to go that route, won't it also have a huge impact on our industries, especially in some of the partner states? Maybe it's something that the consultants may want to consider more, and I would propose a bit more discussion with the industry players and the BMOs that are present on the call. Also during the presentation, I did not hear much discussed on the frequency of taxation. Have you looked at the various laws in the different jurisdictions? Case in point, rates of increase or revision of taxes across the EAC market states. For example, excise duty, where in some countries there's adjustment. So what is an ideal based on the technical expertise in the research that has been done by KPMG? Because we have experienced some partner states do not increase as frequently as others. So what would be a good recommendation out of the study that you've done? And I would call out specifically increase in excise, especially due to inflation, something that you could consider reviewing, and what is an ideal, and especially to bring about predictability and ability of industries to be able to plan ahead. And also, what is an adjustment, if the study can cover that? Is an adjustment just an upward adjustment, or also can be a downward adjustment? So something that you can consider on the go. So I submit. My name is Frida Mbugua from EABL. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Frida. I think the consultant has taken your comments and the inquiries, but also the secretariat, where you are talking of the issue of the minimum rate. But I think maybe we'll talk of minimum and maybe the ceiling, where if we want to go upward, maybe we'll have some sort of ceiling. But let's have the comments. Then if we have at least 4, we can go back for clarification. Abu Moki, are you in, please?
Niko karibu sana. Yeah, hamjambo. Thank you very much. Now, 2 quick issues. One is the difference levels of development of the partner states. It's true we are all pygmies, but we have different heights. How is that being considered in the harmonization? And then 2 is the issue of the purposes for which these taxes are generated. Now, evidence is showing that most of these partner states, their public expenditure is on the increasing rate, which means they will need more and more taxes. And because of that, they're even maneuvering to come up with other modes of taxes. So as we're harmonizing this, they may be maneuvering other taxes in order to meet the increasing rate of public expenditure for which they have to address. So how is that being factored into the formula? Asante sana.
Asante, Abu Mok. I think I can see also the hand for Akinya again. Oh, this was the previous one. Akinyi Gikonyo.
Thank you, Adrian, once again. Sorry, I was just thinking, harmonization of taxes has been on the table for the last 10 years, for the last 15 years. Is the report coming up with the, what do you call it, the how, or what it would take to get to a harmonized position, including looking at Article 15 of the protocol, so that even as we have this conversation, we know what it will take. The roadmap looks as such. It's not a smooth process. It's a challenging process because we have to actually get into legislation review and etc. So I don't know, but if we are thinking that direction, then probably at this point we want to say, yes, as you consider it, some of what needs to be done is X, Y. Because why doesn't it ever move? It has no board, right? There's no ownership of that process, and that's why it keeps bouncing. It gets into an office, it bounces. It stands with a committee, it bounces back. So we need to know what is it that needs to be done. And then finally, even as we say it, we probably need to hear what the ministries, what the ministries of finance of the partner states, and we don't have to mention names, we can say 3 ministries thought that it is important to have this, or to allow excise duty to go in the direction it's going because of X, Y, Z. While one, like was mentioned, one thinks that probably it's not right because of, and then the contribution that came from, there was a gentleman who took us through the excise story. It's important that we incorporate some of that into the report, so that the case we are putting on the table is a real case, and it's not about business, it's about East Africa, because we are talking about revenue to government, we are talking about business for the people, and we are talking about removing illicit. So we need to be as objective and as candid as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gikonyo. I think for your comment, maybe after we get clarification from the consultant, I think Dr. Dr. Pantaleo will come again, maybe to highlight the policy we have, harmonization of domestic tax policy, which we think is our roadmap in terms of how are we going to harmonize domestic taxes. I think if there is someone I can see his hand or her hand from Uma. Uma, can you come please for comments?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, this is Collins Agaba from UMA, Uganda Manufacturers Association, Uganda. Thank you for the report. Yes, we went through the report, but we realized there are some issues. For example, they mentioned about syntax and essential goods and services. We are seeking a definition of what a syntax is. Do you look at environmental degradation as a syntax, like a good which is harming in the environment as a syntax? Secondly, when you're defining essential goods and services, we look at financial services or internet nowadays is becoming an essential good. Would you also want to, because the excise duty on internet and communication services across the EAC. So I wanted to know how could you define these essential goods and services, not looking at those things of looking at food and clothes only. And also we're seeking, they were talking about informal formality and all that. We thought maybe we could introduce a sales duty tax in the EAC to reduce on those informalities and loss of revenue, the fears of loss of revenue by the EAC government. Thank you.
Hello. Okay. Thank you, from Uma. There is someone like GM Finance. Are you there? Can we have your comment, please? Okay, I think we invite our consultant to respond to some of the comments from the discussion and even give some clarification. Mr. Sabato, please, can you come?
Yeah, thanks. Well, there's a number of comments. Should I start with syntax? So I think what we mentioned in the report and which is, I think, clear is historically, excise was introduced as syntax to discourage some behavior, and that is one of the purposes of taxation. But now it seems we have departed from the purpose, and now we are driven by revenue. And you see from the report that some of the respondents say they do not see substitute for excise duty if the government were to reduce or remove it. So which means some of the governments are actually relying on excise duty as a revenue source. So my fellow from UMA, I just want to agree with you that I think we're on the same side saying excise duty need to be revisited, especially on some of the goods, because really it shouldn't be subject to excise duty, but rather probably other taxes, but not excise duty, which is meant to be to discourage the consumption. There is a question from Abu Moki, who says what could some sort of a roadmap, which Adrian have tried to address. The initial roadmap was, to progressively reduce or really reduce the disparities. And by progressively, they had mentioned starting with customs, which now we have a single customs territory, then excise duty, VAT, and income tax. But then, yes, I want to agree, we need to come up with a roadmap for the specific excise duty. And in this case, as part of our scope, we will come up with a policy brief, which will be addressing that question. So after this validation workshop, we'll be then sitting down to come up with a policy brief, which will provide, will be responding to your question. On frequency of taxation, I mean the rates of increase or revision, we agree, especially in the EAC, except our neighbors Ethiopia, who do not change their laws frequently. Most of the EAC countries, they will change these laws every year. So every time you see a finance bill or a finance act, you will definitely see a number of changes as if we are making a new law. So that is really a problem, and we have looked into that. So it is a line in one of the pages in our report, but if it is not coming out clearly, we'll expand more on that. On setting a minimum rate, or a ceiling rather, yes, I think I agree with you. If you just leave the partner states at liberty of setting the ceiling, then you probably be ending in the same similar issue that we are discussing here. So maybe to agree with Adrian, we need to probably put a ceiling rather than the minimum, because I don't think the minimum is an issue. But if we want to harmonize, then we need to manage both the minimum and the maximum. And so I think that will go with setting up the maximum and the minimum. Now the problem is, which again is a question for one of our colleagues online on the fear. If we want to analyze how much each partner state will lose, yes, you need data, but you also need the modeling of data, because you need to say, if I were to reduce the excise duty by 1%, for example, how much would that mean to the government? Loss of revenue by how much? And for some governments, they would now come with another question: what is the substitute for that? So I think that is where now the EAC Secretariat needs to come in terms of, you know, sitting with these governments and having a real conversation on how each country can do analysis of how much they are willing to give. You know, it's a give and take. And really, if we want to have a harmonized EAC, we must be willing to, you know, give at times and take at times. So the frequency goes with the fear. Normally, and in the past, it was even worse. It was a hide and seek. You wouldn't even know what is in the Minister of Finance's briefcase until that evening when all EAC countries are speaking in the budget. But now you can see the changes. Yeah? Now you can see the finance bill being released earlier, so at least people know what is the finance minister's briefcase before he even stands for that budget speech. So I think we are making a step. But yes, for the sake of this study, a recommendation needs to be included. I agree. On ETS or DTS, I mean the digital tax stamps, or in other countries called the electronic tax stamps. I think the question was, okay, so we are where we are. How do we move forward? I think the concern is well known. It's expensive. It increases the cost of production. The temporary solution would be either you suspend the applicability, but probably that is not a practical approach given the motive, because the motive was to curb for, you know, counterfeits. and that seems to be working properly. The only problem is this came in with cost on top of excise duties. So the recommendation that you will see in the report is either we reduce the excise duty or we reduce the cost of ETS. Now, to reduce the cost of ETS, you need to be looking into the suppliers. If it's just one supplier, then that supplier will be monopolizing the market and will be deciding the price. But if you allow different suppliers to come in, again, that risk of counterfeit might even come in, because the more the suppliers, the higher the chances that some of them might not be faithful. So that is where really the fear is coming from. So, but it's a conversation that we shouldn't be avoiding. It's a conversation that we should take on board in terms of how the cost can be reduced. So excise duty reduction could be one of the quick way of getting away with the reduced cost of production. And really, I like the question on an analysis in terms of how much each partner state will lose, because that will, the question of whether it's an increase in revenue, reduced revenue, or a break even, that is a key question in deciding on whether we want to reduce the excise duty rates or maintain the same, because it really informs how much our decision is affecting us. If I increase excise duty rates today, that means the cost of production going high. That means actually reducing my income tax, corporate income tax, because the profit goes down. Now it's a a cost benefit analysis, and that requires data. But I'm aware of different companies. For example, in Tanzania, where I'm sitting now, the Tanzania Breweries Limited has done analysis, a very detailed analysis for the past 3 years. The cigarette company here, TCC, has done a detailed analysis supported with data. And, I've seen a presentation by Coca-Cola. They have done a good analysis supported with numbers. So I think if the manufacturers, or rather the business community, is also willing to disclose some information for the sake of getting somewhere with this, that would be helpful. The problem is in a public forum like this would be contributing, but when we reach out for data, it becomes now a competition issue. Whose data should be disclosed? So, my advice would be the business community sitting together and moving together for the common goal, rather than being, a bit of, for lack of a better word, saying being selfish. Yeah, so in terms of the discriminative taxes, yes, Adrian, I've put it clear. We have an inventory list of those discriminative taxes as identified by the respondents. And by that, we mean taxes that are charged on similar products, but at different rates or different base or different incentives across the region on similar products or services. Yeah, so Adrian, please let me know if I have missed an item.
Almost all the inquiries. Maybe we can hear from the Pantaleo, but before we hear from Doctor, there is Professor who is representing Somali. I gave him some time to talk, but I don't know if he's hearing me. Professor Kabdi, can you come for comments? I think maybe there is a challenge with communication, but I think we have reading our chat rooms, and there is someone who wanted to share with us the memorandum on the tax in the air transport. So we are actually urging him or her to share with us. But Doctor, when you are commenting, some people are asking, in terms of rates, are we going to have a single rates, or we are going to have a maximum and minimum rate in order to allow some flexibility for the country? So you can also comment on the term of the roadmap, because I can see some people are still questioning if it is a reality to achieve harmonized excise tax and the other tax. But also we need also to hear on the agreement on avoidance of double taxation, which we think that if the agreement come into being, can harmonize a lot of income tax, especially on the withholding. Dr. Karim.
Okay, thank you very much, Adrian. First of all, let me say that I've heard loud and clear the involvement of private sector in this process. I've taken note of that, and the EAC Secretariat will work on that. Now, maybe in terms of the roadmap, I think the policy, we have a policy that was adopted by the council, and in that policy, it is only stated that we will do this gradually. And I think you have heard even in the common market protocol, it is stated that the partner states agree to gradually harmonize their taxes. So this is a gradual process. And the policy guides that in that gradual process, we start with the excise duty. And once we are able to harmonize that, we move into VAT, and then last into income tax. This is the guidance we get from the policy. But in terms of timelines, they are not provided in the policy, but there is a roadmap for establishment of a single currency in the region. And that roadmap, domestic taxation, harmonization of domestic tax is one of the items that are to be implemented in that roadmap. Now, the roadmap establishment of the common currency was supposed to be next year, 2024. But when this roadmap was reviewed, we realized that so many things that are in that roadmap were lagging behind the agreed timelines, including the domestic tax harmonization. So the roadmap was reviewed, and the new timelines were given that now the single currency will be established in 2031 and not 2024, as it was earlier agreed. Of course, the ministers of finance have endorsed that proposal, and will be taking it to next week to the council. And once council approve, then it becomes the agreed roadmap. Now, in that roadmap now, the harmonization of domestic taxes is to be achieved by December 2025. So broadly, that's the roadmap we are looking at, so that this process has to be completed by December 2025. The minimum rates, the setting of rates or harmonized rates, we had intensive discussion when we were developing the policy, and we were guided by ministries of finance, because you understand this thing is this process involves revenue authorities, ministries of finance, and it's a negotiation So we were guided how the partner states, particularly ministries of finance, would want this to happen. So what we had on the table is 3 alternatives. One, we would harmonize the rates by setting a single rate. So it's maybe 5% for alcohol across the region, no more, no less. That was the first option. Second option was to have a range where you set a minimum and maximum. So the partner states are allowed to exercise some flexibility by varying within this range. That was the second option. And the third option is where you only have a minimum and you don't have any maximum. So that discussion took quite long, and the ministries of finance guided that it's the minimum, it's the third option that will be adopted. And that was adopted, and it's already in the policy that has been adopted by the council. So as we harmonize now, we are doing the actual harmonization, we will need to be guided by that policy. So at this point, probably the option of saying we set the minimum and the maximum may not be there now, because the policy is very clear on that. And the ministers of finance were arguing, we set a minimum to prevent harmful competition, tax harmful competition, that is race to the bottom. But in terms of maximum, they said there is a self-correcting mechanism that will prevent the partner states from deviating too much from that regional minimum, and that is smuggling. So the argument is that if Kenya, for example, decided to deviate from that regional minimum too much, you will have to deal with the smuggling across your border with Tanzania, across your border with Uganda, across your border with South Sudan, and they said that is too much for it. It will prevent Kenya from deviating too much from that minimum. So they said setting a minimum will be probably enough. So that is how we got into that. And we also agreed in terms of revising these rates. We agreed that because the rates will be set in US dollar, and then a partner state will convert using the appropriate rates into their domestic currencies. So we said with the exchange rate variation and inflation, it's useful to review these rates every year, so annually, so that we take on board the exchange rate variations and the inflation. Now, regarding agreement on double taxation, prevention of double taxation, I think many of you know that we had this multilateral avoidance of double taxation in the region, which was signed about 10, 12 years ago, and but they were to be ratified by partner states. And unfortunately, one partner state did not ratify. Now it has been too long. So of course that partner state is now happy to ratify, but we thought that we should first of all update the provisions of DTA to take into account the changes that have taken place between 10 years and now. So we are in that process, and we are hoping that probably before the end of this year, we'll be able to have those agreements ready for partner states to start the process of ratifying, and they probably will be able to update, to adopt it as a region. Thank you, Adrian.
Very much, Doctor, for the clarification. I think because of the interest of time, if you have any comments, you can send your comments to our email, anjau@eabc-online.com, or any EABC person you know. Then we will share the comment with our consultant. Maybe Sabato, if you have anything you want to comment before we invite our ED to close, because actually our time is off.
Again, for me, really is to thank everybody for making time to attend this. It's really helpful because then it gives us a direction of what is expected from the majority of us. And so we will do, again, a final check after we have received your comments. Comments from the floor. We have noted few, but I know probably a number of them still coming through because I see you have shared the draft report and a number of them commenting. So I believe a number of them will come through and we'll be able to action accordingly and come up with a final report. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Sabato. Now we are requesting everyone to tune the camera so we can take a group photo before we invite ED for closing. Group photo, please. Video camera. Patrick, can you take the photo? Okay. Ready? One more. One more? Yeah, ask people okay. So serious. Ciao, bana. Gift can take also. We can hear you, bana.
Are you done, Tim?
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Now we thank you very much, but let me invite my ED to make closing remarks. Welcome, ED.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Adrian, for moderating this session. First of all, allow me to thank Trademark Africa for their support, for their continuous support to this exercise. And indeed, as you've heard from the discussion, we still have a lot of work to do. A lot of further analysis need to be done, including quantification of the interventions as well as the impact analysis. Perhaps that would be this engagement has provoked further analysis and further studies that we need to do, not necessarily with the KPMG, but once we get funding from other support agencies, we can dive deeper into the details. Also, allow me to thank Dr. Kess for the clarification and for the roadmap, for sharing the roadmap. And I think this is the essence and rationale of this exercise, because we need and we should continue to inform the policy analysis. And I'm happy that you've shared with us the roadmap and in terms of the importance of this exercise in terms of going through the monetary union. And you ably highlighted that we cannot achieve a single currency or common currency without harmonizing the domestic tax, because it is one of the preconditions and a prerequisite for monetary union. And I'm happy you've shared that the Council of Ministers have given the roadmap by 2025 that we need to have concluded this exercise. And what came out clearly, again, from the study and from the participants is that involvement of the private sector is very critical. Indeed, we need to engage into this exercise, and allow me to thank the Association of Manufacturers, CAM, Uganda Manufacturers Association, who have ably engaged and highlighted the impact. So in my view, the key takeaways which I took a note and which maybe Adrian will share, you will share with the consultant. Again, one is a further analysis. So we need to do a deep dive to show our government in terms of revenue loss implication for non-harmonization. What is the government, our government, because everyone asked about the net effect, which is very important, and the consultant need to demonstrate that. What are the net effect to the government? What is the net effect on our business competitiveness? As I mentioned that when you look at the study, when you look at what we call CBI, cross-border investment is not happening, or it has been static due to these issues, including unharmonized domestic taxes. Then the warfare loss implication, we need also to show our government that by raising either excise duty or digital stamp, it has an implication on our welfare of our people, especially the poor segment of the society, who are the most consumer of these beverages and food and other related products. So the cost is passed on to the consumer. We need to demonstrate that. Further interrogation and further analysis is required on digital taxes, whether the digital taxes is serving its purposes. And again, with taxation, you need to look at the productivity of a tax before you levy a tax. I think that analysis also KPMG need to show that. I took a note of the consultant, the hesitation from Burundi, and I reviewed it, and it makes a lot of sense. We need also to look at the heterogeneous nature of our economies. For example, our economies are at different levels. So what does it mean if you harmonize for countries that are in the process of development? Are they not going to lose revenue? What are that revenue? What is the offset mechanism? How do you offset that loss? I think it is very important also to provide guidance around that. Finally, again, the issue of political will. I think the political will is there, but again, we need to demonstrate the impact. We need to, again, that's our role as EABC. We need to show our government in terms of those losses and what are the mitigation measures do we have in terms of offsetting those losses that may emanate from harmonization. In overall, I think it has been an eye-opener. It has been a very good discussion. So we need to take it further by giving, in your policy brief, the consultant, you need to highlight those implications, as I mentioned, on the government, business competitiveness, cross-border investment, and other FDI, as well as looking at the productivity of the tax, because the rationale of imposing a tax, it must be productive. So if it is counterproductive, then we need to advocate for the removal or not administering such taxes. So I think this engagement has been excellent, and I want to thank everyone, thank all the participants, thank all the stakeholders, including the officers from the Ministry of Finance, who have been sharing their insight, who have provided inputs, and we look forward to get a final product. Again, kudos to the consultant. That's the good work you've done with limited time and with limited resources. So I want again to thank you and thank our funder, Trademark Africa. Asanteni sana, and have a blessed evening.
Thank you, Edie. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Asante.